Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And today we're going to talk about the fall of the House of Usher.
Usher.
The final Mike Flanagan Netflix miniseries based on a famous horror author. In this case, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, like the title suggests, it is obviously an adaptation of The Fall of the House of Usher, but it's actually more than that because each individual episode adapts a different Edgar Allan Poe story and works it into The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah, it also brings in characters from a lot of Edgar Allan Poe stories that a lot of people haven't read.
That's true. It also brings in Edgar Allan Poe's poetry.
Yes.
And works it into the story, both literally and thematically at times.
Yep.
There's a lot of ravens flying around in this show, naturally.
Oh, yeah.
Now, much like when we did the VHS movies, I'm going to use my phone for notes. The best way I can think of to tackle this is to go episode by episode, once without spoilers, and then in the spoiler section, go into like the spoilers of each episode.
Right.
Now, the one thing I will tell you right up front, the show is structured so that every episode features the death of one of the family members, and none of the family members are going to survive this story. So
yeah, every member of the family of Usher is dead by the end of this.
But what is a spoiler is how each of them die and the circumstances that lead up to that. So I'm going to leave that to the spoiler section, but I will tell you which character dies in which episode because those are the episodes that focus on them.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say this before we get into the episodes. I think Mike Flanagan wanted to go out with a bang on the Netflix specials.
Yeah.
Because this one feels like he's like, all right, so I've done the spooky haunted stuff, the philosophical esoteric stuff with Midnight Mass. Well, you know what I haven't really done a lot of in these specials? Gore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of gore. And this show is probably the goriest thing he's made, like, at all.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I would agree.
But it also has all the elements that make all of his other specials awesome, or miniseries awesome. So let's get into this. The first episode, A Midnight Dreary, is the one that kind of sets up the family and sets up the whole premise. You have the Usher family. Each of the children have died, and the head of the Usher household, the last remaining person, telling the story of how he lost all his children. But the main focus of this specific episode is actually a bit on his and his sister's past. It goes into the weird, creepy shit that happened with their mother, who apparently had this disease. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, they give it a name.
They give it a name, but it's this mental disease that causes her to just go nuts. Everything in this episode is almost like the wraparound if it were an anthology series.
Yeah.
Because it constantly comes back to this setup of the head of the house sitting in this room with this guy telling his story.
Yeah.
So this episode sets you up to the premise of the show, but it also is the one that eases viewers of his other shows in because it has the most elements that are similar to the haunting shows, especially everything surrounding the mother. Now, while the mother isn't really like a ghost, she does a lot of things that are very similar to some of the ghosts in some of his past works.
Yeah.
Appearing in places where she shouldn't appear and freaking people out and just kind of lurking in the background. And it gets pretty freaky. But just hold on, because this show's going to go way further than what they do with this mom. And what they do with this mom is already pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
All right, so the next episode is the episode that focuses on the youngest Usher, Perry.
Mask of the Red Death.
Mask of the Red Death. Now, Perry's whole deal is that he wants to open a nightclub, and he wants to get a loan from his father to open this nightclub, but the father doesn't really approve of the whole nightclub thing.
Yeah.
And all the sex and drugs and all the debauchery that goes with that. He doesn't feel like it goes with the brand of the Ushers.
Yeah.
Perry has to go off on his own and set up his own nightclub. Fuck his father. He's gonna make his own nightclub with hookers and blow.
Yeah.
Much like most members of this family, he's got his own narcissism.
Yeah.
That causes him to be blind to things that would be obvious to anyone else in his circumstances, but he's blind to because he's tunnel visioned on what he wants to accomplish. And this will lead to his downfall at the end of the episode in perhaps one of the goriest scenes in Mike Flanagan's career, but that is a spoiler.
Yeah. Although if you are familiar with the Mask of the Red Death,
you'll have an idea.
You probably are.
You will have an idea.
Yeah, you'll have a good idea where it's going. That's one of the things that kind of continues to be fun about the show. He's like, everyone knows Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes.
So it's really just a matter of how we're going to get to those climaxes, how we're going to get to those important moments in the Poe story we're referencing.
Flanagan does a really good job of knowing that people know.
Yes.
So he kind of fucks with you throughout the entire episode. What you're waiting to reach the Edgar Allan Poe punchline, right?
Yeah.
But he will make sure to milk every second leading up to that.
Yeah.
Until you finally get it. And when you get it, it might not be exactly the way you expect because Flanagan's really good at surprising people. This episode is also the second episode to feature a character named Verna who shows up mysteriously in each episode in a different form. And you spend most of the show trying to figure out who this person is. And in this case, she shows up at the party wearing the Mask of the Red Death.
In this one, she's the Mask of the Red Death.
And she kind of like follows Perry throughout the episode wearing this mask and wearing this red outfit until finally showing up at his nightclub at the end. And then we'll get into the spoilers in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
And this character is kind of like for lack of a better way of putting it, she is the mystery box of the show. Most of the show, you're wondering who this person is, what their connection is to the Usher family, and why they seem to be appearing every time one of these children dies.
Yeah.
So the next episode, I believe, is Murders in the Rue Morgue. Now, this one focuses on the character of Camille. Camille is basically the family's PR person.
Yeah.
She's the one who handles everyone's PR problems. She's the one who brushes things under the rugs or tries to spin things so that whatever bad thing happens to the family is spun in a positive light that makes the family look good.
Yeah.
In this instance, we watch her try to do that this episode with Perry's death. This episode also features her trying to look into her sister. At the very beginning of the show, we find out that the Usher family is being brought to trial for their crimes in the pharmaceutical business. Yeah, that's another thing about this show. This show has a lot to say about the pharmaceutical business and the for-profit healthcare business in the United States. It's very much fuck Big Pharma.
Yeah, it's fuck Big Pharma and the family that profited off of Oxycontin.
During the court case at the beginning of the show in the first episode, the DA suggests that someone in the family is going to show up as a witness, revealing all the family secrets. So someone is a rat in the family. Throughout these 3 episodes, they've been trying to sniff out who the rat is. And a lot of people thought it was Perry because he's the youngest. He's considered a bit of a fuck up. When you watch that second episode, there's some things revealed about Perry that make you go, oh yeah, I see why everyone thought you would have been the rat because you're not the most trustworthy person when it comes to certain things. But because Perry obviously does not make it past the second episode, Camille starts looking into her sister, who does these heart experiments on monkeys in this lab that they refer to as the Rue Morgue.
Yeah.
And it's referred to as the Rue Morgue because these experiments on the monkeys usually don't go well for the monkeys. Up until this point, you kind of had the vibe that there's something supernatural going on. But there's no question by this episode.
Yeah, by the end of this episode, you're like, oh, yeah, there's something supernatural happening.
This is not just like someone fucking with the family. There's some magic going on. There's some freaky deaky supernatural shit going on. Every fucking sibling in this family, with like the exception of 2 or 3 of them, are all like in these polyamorous polycules in some capacity.
Yeah.
You had Perry, who has his like 2 roommates. One's obviously a guy, possibly genderqueer, and the other one's this girl. And you have Camille, who has her 2 assistants, one a guy and one a girl. She basically like forces to sleep with her under contract. It's very obvious that part of what defines the Usher family is agreed on every level.
Yeah.
They can't just have sexual partners. They have to control and own their sexual partners.
Yes.
On some level. Alrighty then. So the next episode, I believe, is The Black Cat.
Yeah, this one's got all the elements of the original story. It's got a black cat, seems to have supernatural powers.
It focuses on one of Roderick's sons named Leo, who has basically become this video game developer guy.
But he's a video game, like, financer.
Yeah, he's not like actually directly developing the video games. He is just providing funding to people to make video games for him, essentially.
Yeah.
And he just kind of stays at home playing the game.
Yeah.
That's basically all he does.
He's a good looking, but like ultimately kind of hollow guy.
Yeah, he is in a queer relationship with a man, but we see right away that he cheats on him.
Oh, yeah.
Right away with other people, and we see him cheating on him with a girl. So we know that he also kind of has this same kind of thing going on that the rest of the family does. They can't just have one partner, they gotta have all the partners.
Yeah.
And that's really his main sin. His main sin is that he's kind of lazy.
Yeah.
He's a major drug addict.
Yeah.
And he cheats on his boyfriend and doesn't really treat his boyfriend really well.
Well, actually, his big sin is that he cannot admit guilt.
That's true, too. Yeah. Over the course of this episode, that becomes very clear because the whole premise of this episode is that in one of his drug benders, as a result of like his siblings dying, he kills his boyfriend's cat. And he spends almost the entirety of this episode trying to replace that cat so he doesn't have to admit to his boyfriend what happened.
Yeah. And so if you don't want to see a dead cat, there's a dead cat.
Warning.
In this,
there's a dead cat.
Remember, this is an adaptation of The Black Cat, so there was going to be a dead cat. Mm-hmm. And other things happen.
There's some stuff that happens at the end of this episode that are major spoilers.
Yes.
So we're probably going to want to move on to the next episode.
Yeah, we should.
But needless to say, this obsession with trying to fix this cat thing leads to the demise of Leo. Oh yes, the telltale heart. Okay, so if episode 2 was the goriest thing, this is probably one of the most fucked up things I've seen in a Mike Flanagan show.
Yeah, this one was messed up because the entire time this sibling has been developing an artificial heart. All right, you see where this is going, right?
And this is Victorine, I believe, is Victorine. Victorine is in a relationship with her wife.
Yeah, who's a surgeon.
And the two of them are trying to come up with a cure for heart disease, essentially.
Yeah.
An artificial heart, an eye heart.
Yeah.
That would cure any and all possible heart diseases, especially ones that are connected to the drug the family produces.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that we find out is why she gets so much funding for what she does. But anyway, this episode obviously involves Victorine killing someone, and then the ticking of that heart that she is trying to create
is the prototype
haunts her.
Yeah.
For the rest of the episode. I can't tell you more beyond that because every inch I go into the story is going to be closer and closer to spoilers.
Yeah.
Because everything in this episode is best just watched. But like, it is one of the most fucked up episodes of the show. It's probably one of the most fucked up things I've seen Mike Flanagan make. Victorine's whole sin, really. If Camille was just a complete bitch who mistreated everyone, Perry was a bit of a user.
Oh, yeah.
And Leo can't admit guilt. Victorine's whole thing, would we call it pride? I don't know what it is. She can't admit that this thing she's trying to create isn't working.
She is attempting to chase the money and be famous for making this thing. That's
right.
working.
She's trying to fix this heart, but not really to help people.
Right. Yeah, it's all about her legacy.
And this leads her down her descent.
Yeah.
Into complete ruin, and obviously not making it alive because none of these siblings survive.
Yeah, and she's doing all kinds of things like falsifying documents, falsifying studies,
and falsifying a lot of stuff that says that like her wife approved stuff when her wife didn't.
Yep.
Which obviously makes her wife mad. Her relationship becomes on the rocks at a certain point.
Yeah, because she's like, what the fuck is going on?
But she's also under pressure from Roderick. Because, like, Roderick is really trying to find a cure to, like, the side effects of his drugs.
Yeah. Well, he's also trying to find a cure for the thing that he is dying of.
That's true. So he's having, like, the same kind of crazy hallucinations that the mom had. So at this point, there's a bunch of jump scares involving those hallucinations.
Yeah.
That stuff is very, like, Haunting of Hill House.
Yes.
Kind of stuff. Goldbug. Oh, yes.
Oh, Goldbug.
Tamerlane So this one is about Tamerlane, who is one of Roderick's like original children with his original wife, I believe.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of like one of the immediate heirs of the throne. Her and was it Frederick?
Frederick.
Frederick.
Frederick. Yeah.
Frederick. They call him Frederick because he's like the number 2. Like,
yeah.
She has this whole thing where she is trying to run this Gwyneth Paltrow-esque supplement business.
Yeah, she's running a lifestyle subscription business.
And she's got her husband in on it as like the influencer face of the whole operation. And this whole episode is basically the destruction of that business due to her own paranoia and neurosis.
Yeah.
Because she becomes convinced of everything from her husband cheating on her with women that she supplied her husband, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that's because she has this weird fetish where she likes to see her husband sleeping with other women that are pretending to be her.
What's also involved is like a level of intimacy and familiarity with him that she herself does not have.
Yeah, because she's a complete cold fish.
Yeah.
The pit and the pendulum. All right, so this one's about Frederick, who is the last remaining heir to this fortune, Roderick's first son, the first son he had with his original wife. And he is a character who's been presented up until this point as a completely ineffectual, worthless, weak, pathetic, incapable, incompetent goober.
Yeah.
And this episode reveals him to be one of the most fucked up members of the entire family. Like, narcissistic, sociopathic, just monster. And the episode's called The Pit and the Pendulum, so you kind of have an idea how he eventually gets his comeuppance for this. You're going to be wondering how that scenario's going to play out.
Yeah, you're wondering where the pit is and where the pendulum's going to show up.
Exactly.
Because you're like, well, I mean, in the original Pit and the Pendulum, the guy's already there, so how are we going to get this guy into a pit with a pendulum?
Now, every other member of this family up until this point have pretty bad sins, either in their business dealings or in their personal life. This guy probably has, next to the Telltale heart lady, the worst sin in his personal life.
Wow. Yeah, but the thing that's fucked up about him is that his worst sin happens during the telling of the tale.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of others, you're just sort of like, oh yeah, you've been leading up to this, but you've done like some horrible shit.
Because a lot of them like have blood on their hands before the show even starts.
Yeah.
This character, like he's part of the family, so he's got like the blood of the family fortune on his hands. But you don't realize how terrible he is until you see the shit he does. And it's been building from episode to episode.
It's been building from like the second episode.
And this is probably the character who gets the most satisfying death. A lot of the other like siblings, even the ones that do some terrible things, a lot of them you do have some level of like empathy for, right? There's none for him by the end.
Oh no,
like you have
by the end for him,
you have like, zero empathy.
Die.
Like I felt a little bad for Perry at moments. I felt a little bad for Leo. I even felt bad for Victorine at certain points. Less so for the gold bug lady and less so for
Frederick. Yeah.
For Frederick. If you can't tell, I fucking love this show.
Yeah.
This show is phenomenal. We have one more episode, but I'm going to save everything about that episode for the spoilers because that's
because
at
that point, that's the finale.
It's the culmination of everything. But like, I think that this is probably the strongest overall thing Mike Flanagan has done, which is saying a lot because all his stuff is great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They've all been really good.
But this feels like everything he learned on everything he's ever worked on is somehow represented in this.
Yeah.
Like a magnum opus of his Netflix stuff.
Yeah, I think if your worst film is Oculus, you're doing really well.
Yeah. Depending upon my mood, I might like Midnight Mass a little more, but this like pound for pound has more happening than Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass is a little slower, it's a little bit more contemplative.
Well, it's a Stephen King story.
Yeah.
It's a Stephen King style story.
This is, in comparison, far more, for lack of a better way of putting it, action-packed.
Yeah, this is a lot more punchy.
Every second of this has a lot of shit happening, and every episode of this has something major happen.
Well, each one ends ends with a murder. That right there does a lot.
It automatically propels it, right?
Yeah, it's not slow at all.
Before you know it, you'll have watched 5 episodes and you're like, holy shit, it's like 4 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, you just kind of keep going.
So I highly recommend The Fall of the House of Usher. It is Mike Flanagan's final Netflix miniseries, so it is on Netflix. So with that said, let us move on to the spoilers. The big spoiler of the first episode is Roderick and his sister were like the bastard child of this
this
pharmaceutical billionaire guy. Their backstory involves their mom losing her mind, them thinking she's dead, burying her crawling herself out of the grave, and then running over and strangling their father in his mansion.
Yeah.
And this is what kind of like establishes the Usher family.
Yeah.
We also see him and his sister New Year's Day back in like the 70s going on the 80s, meeting Verna, this bartender. And we do not know what they've done, but they're obviously like hiding from the authorities in this bar and trying to act normal. But this is the first time we see Verna. So the Mask of the Red Death. The first big spoiler of this is it turns out Perry wasn't just creating a nightclub just to have fun and orgies and all that stuff. He was actually creating a nightclub so that he could get a whole bunch of rich and famous people and their family members to come to this nightclub, participate in the debauchery, and he can record it and use it as blackmail to fund his real business, which is blackmail. It makes sense why people thought he would be the rat in the family, because that's basically what turns out to be his business.
Yeah, that's his deal.
That's his whole deal. But unfortunately for him, he has tapped his sprinklers for his club that he wanted to like have rain down shit. Like he wanted to do basically that scene in Blade where like the blood is all raining down as everyone parties. He decided to do this at his old abandoned factory that his family owns. But the reason why this factory was abandoned was because it had a bunch of chemicals that it wasn't properly disposing of. So when he taps into the water lines to do this, it's got all the chemicals in the water lines.
Because they dumped all the chemicals into
the water
towers because they didn't want to have to pay to have it removed.
And the thing is, the character of Verna shows up, basically like tries to give him an out.
He's gonna die, but he does not have to die horribly and painfully.
And taking everyone else out with him. He doesn't heed that warning. And everyone gets fucking melted into like a Cronenbergian pile of just meats and mush.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
While 9 Inch Nails is playing too, so it's fucking hardcore.
This becomes important to Roderick's plot because one of the people who's at the party is his wife.
The murders in the Rue Morgue. So Camille, in looking into her sister's shady heart business, sneaks into the Rue Morgue, gets confronted by Verna.
Yeah.
Who offers her an out to not go in there, not try to like rat on her sister, not try to do all this. But she does it anyway because, you know, Camille does what Camille wants.
Yeah.
And then Verna starts making monkey noises.
Yeah.
And starts talking like she's one of the experiments.
One of the experiment monkeys, yeah.
And then next thing you know, you realize as she's getting closer and closer that, oh, she is one of those monkeys and she's about to maul Camille.
Yeah.
And Camille realizes this too and goes, fuck it, I got mine.
Yeah.
And then gets mauled by like one of the fucking experimental monkeys. And so this is the point where you're like, okay, all right, Verna has supernatural powers. Despite all the weirdness in the first 2 episodes, there's a part of you that goes, well, maybe she just is trying to systematically destroy this family because they fucked her over in the past.
Yeah, it could be Saw shit.
Yeah, you know, like it could just be like a very elaborate villain plot, right? You know?
Right.
But this episode firmly establishes, no, she's using magic powers of some kind. Ah, yes, Leo and the Black Cat. Verna shows up in this episode as the person who sells him a alternate cat, an identical cat.
Yeah.
To replace the cat that he thinks he killed when he was on one of those drug benders. So he brings the cat home, and the cat is just an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
Clawing him up, leaving dead animals in his shoes and on his chair.
Almost scratches his eye, not over his eye, eye eyeball.
Yep.
You know, so he's bleeding from the eyeball.
Yep. And so he's becoming increasingly erratic as a result of this cat. He becomes obsessed with the cat. He reaches a point where he's chasing the cat around the fucking apartment, busting down his walls and tearing everything apart. And his like boyfriend comes home and is just like, my boyfriend's gone nuts. What the fuck's going on?
Yeah, my boyfriend's gone nuts. I am out of here.
And there's this great moment where he calls the lady he bought the cat from, and so Verna shows up, attacks the cat, and fucks up its eye. Verna turns around, and her eye's fucked up like the cat's.
Yeah.
So once again, something weird's fucking going on here. And this ultimately culminates with him chasing the cat off a balcony and falling to his death. Splat. With the ultimate punchline, the actual cat that he thought he killed, Pluto, comes home, walks over his corpse and licks his face, revealing that he never actually killed the cat in the first place.
Yeah.
The Telltale Heart. This episode opens up with Victorine's wife discovering all the falsified shit that Victorine's been doing so far. A lot of the falsified shit has involved Victorine trying to take on human trials of the heart.
Yeah.
And she got a test patient to do this on, who's actually Verna.
Who's actually Verna, yeah.
Who's actually Verna. But she falsified her wife's approval of the whole thing. Even though they're not ready for human trials, none of their apes have survived any of these experiments.
Nothing survived shit.
So there's no way that this human's going to survive. But the wife finds this out. They have an argument. It looks like Victorine just threw something at her wife and it cuts to black. And then the episode goes about her day as she tries to set up, you know, the heart transplant with Verna and all that stuff. But as the episode goes on, it becomes clear that things aren't right. She is slowly losing her mind, and she's
hearing the heart.
She keeps hearing the heart that they created. And it's not like an actual heartbeat. It's the literal sound of the fake heart they created.
Yep.
And what this ultimately culminates to is Roderick figuring out something's off, going to her house and discovering that she killed her wife and has sewn the fake heart into her wife's body to try to bring her wife back to life.
But it doesn't work.
But
the heart doesn't work.
But the heart keeps ticking.
Yeah.
And that's the ticking that she keeps hearing. Ultimately culminating in Victorine's own grief and guilt, resulting in her killing herself.
Yeah.
In front of her dad.
Yeah. And when the heart's beating inside of her wife, like, you see the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like, and they go spurt. Yeah.
You know, but the thing is what's really fucked up is for most of the episode, she's acting like her wife is still alive, even though she's like a corpse there. So there's like some Lars and the Real Girl shit things happening here. All right, so Goldbug, Tamerlane. She's supposed to basically present her new line of whatever the fuck it's supposed to be.
Yeah, which is her own fault because it was originally supposed to be her husband.
Yeah, but she's pushed him away at this point with her paranoia about him sleeping with someone else.
Yeah.
Because she thought she saw one of the escorts they hired, which was actually Verna, in one of his live streams. So she goes to try to give her speech, to present it to the investors and like all that stuff, announce to the world and the press. And she has a complete mental breakdown. At one point, she thinks that like a sex tape of like her husband.
Yes.
And like the escort shows up on the fucking big screen.
And she goes ballistic.
But it's very obvious that like all of this is in her head.
Yeah.
None of it's actually happening.
All anyone sees is her freaking out and like attacking the screen.
And this ultimately culminates in her smashing every mirror in her house and like every glass fixture, ultimately leading to her killing herself by smashing the sex mirror above her bed.
Yeah.
That she obviously used to watch her husband sleep with the escorts.
Yes.
And then the shards just coming down and basically decapitating her.
Yeah. And the entire time, Verna's in the reflection just going like, you ought to calm down.
Yeah.
You should just go to sleep. You should just like chill out.
Yep.
Really? We're going to do this?
Yep. And also, this had one of the weirder moments where Roderick's sister tries to confront Verna because she sees her at that event, runs up to her, and she just disappears into smoke.
Evaporates.
All right, so that leads into the pit and the pendulum. All right, so as we've established, Frederick's wife, she's the hamburger lady now.
Yeah.
You know, she's stuck in bed, her skin's all fucked up, she's on a ventilator.
All the burn ward.
This entire time that she's been in this fucking burn ward situation, Frederick has been obsessing over the fact that she was at Perry's party.
Party, yeah.
And because she was at Perry's party, which he knows was also partially an orgy,
Yeah.
he is convinced that she was cheating on him. Now, she didn't, but she was going to.
Yeah.
So he's partially right on this, but he is more obsessed over this than he is concerned at all about her. In fact, he doesn't give a shit about her.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit about her. He is mad because she is property.
And he can't handle this and has a complete meltdown. So he goes to his brother for some cocaine, starts sniffing the cocaine, and from this point on, starts making the worst decisions and the stupidest decisions possible.
Yeah, and you get the feeling he was never that bright.
No. Like there's a point in which he tries to like open her phone using her thumbprint and then her facial recognition software, despite the fact that she's got no fucking fingerprints
anymore.
And her face is unrecognizable at this point. With some great special effects, by the way, on her face. I gotta say, they did a good job.
Yeah, the makeup effects are great.
But this obsession with his wife being unfaithful leads to him drugging her to keep her docile and in a coma, essentially.
Yeah, which you don't realize until this episode.
Yeah, that he's been doing that the entire time.
Yeah, because why is he bringing her home? And you think it's just because he's being possessive. And that's only half of it. The other half is so he can keep her in a medically induced coma so he can torture her.
Yep, which he does. He knocks out all of her teeth at one point.
Yep.
He goes torture porn on her. Like, I don't know what to call it. Like, it's fucked up. And it's all out of his obsessive need to control her and own her because he feels like he is less of a man because she turned to his brother. Meanwhile, his daughter, who's one of the few people in this family who's not a complete piece of shit, starts to pick up on all this and wants to save her mom. And it's really messed up. So ultimately, this leads into a situation in which he is overseeing the demolishing of the building that Perry turned into a nightclub that they were going to demolish a long time ago, but he never did. And so his dad kind of blames him for Perry turning it into a nightclub because even his dad is a piece of shit who keeps fucking playing the kids against each other.
Fuck yeah.
Like, part of the reason why the kids are so terrible is because of the dad and the way he fucking plays them. So he goes to oversee the demolishing of it, and he goes inside the building, and Verna basically sets up a situation in which he is paralyzed on the ground with the same drug that he took because he's been using this drug to paralyze his wife, and it looks very similar to the cocaine.
Yeah.
Verna actually directly interferes and switches out the cocaine with the paralyzing agent.
Yeah.
So when he goes to inspect the inside of the building before they demolish it to make sure that there's nothing inside he wants to bring out, it ends up kicking in.
Yeah.
And ends up paralyzed on the ground as the building is collapsing around him. And Verna shows up and like taunts him.
Yeah.
And is like, you know, normally I don't get as directly involved in this, but you are like a particular piece of shit.
Yeah,
like,
you had to bring her home and do that, didn't you? And that just got to me.
And you're like, okay,
know?
so this is personal. And at this point, you're sitting there going like, is Verna death? Like, is she death herself? Is that what's going on here? And now that leads into the final episode in which we basically find out that yes, she is death. And they did make a deal with her back in the past. And the deal was essentially that, like, what if everything went your way? You got everything you ever wanted, your fortune, your family, everything or whatever. But at some point, I'm going to come and take all your children.
Yeah, I'm going to kill you and all your kids.
Yep. Your entire bloodline will end. But you'll have gotten everything you wanted.
Yeah.
Would you take that deal? And he takes the deal. And so this entire show has been the collection of that deal, one child at a time. Ultimately, every child was gonna die no matter what, but she kept giving them outs on it not being like a horrific, terrible death that takes other people with them. And they kept choosing no to be terrible people.
Yep.
The saddest part of this episode for me, though, this final episode, is when we find out that the one good character in this family...
Oh, yeah, when Lenore dies. Yeah.
Yeah, Frederick's daughter.
Yeah.
Who's...
So Roderick's granddaughter.
Yes. She has to go too. And Verna doesn't even want to take her.
Yeah,
but that's
the deal.
It's the deal. She gives her this really happy thought about like all the good that's going to come from her actions.
From her actions, it's saving her mom from her dad and all that jazz.
And then lets her go peacefully in her sleep, basically. It's a very sad moment. It's a very somber moment. But it's also one of those moments where you're just like, okay, so she wasn't going to renege on the deal for this. Like, it's still going to happen no matter what. And no matter what, any of these people were going to die. So by this point, we've kind of like caught up. So we're back in that room with the DA and Roderick.
Yeah. And these guys have like a lot of history together. this DA guy, back when he was an investigator, was trying to get Roderick to flip on the company and provide evidence, which it looked like Roderick was going to do.
Yep.
But at the last minute, it turns out he had always intended to double-cross him.
Yeah, he double-crossed him in order to get a leg up in the company and be in the good graces of the higher-ups. So that he can climb himself up the corporate ladder. Also, we find out that the reason why they were hiding from the authorities that one night was because they killed his old boss.
Yeah, they bricked him up.
Yep.
With the cask of Amontillado.
Yep. In the basement of the building.
Yeah.
As it was being renovated. His corpse is still down there to this day in the building that they're in.
Yep.
Their big fucking skyscraper.
Oh, man.
And we find out that this entire time that he's been telling this story to the DA, his dead sister's been in the basement.
Because remember, it's Fall of the House of Usher.
And he has basically mummified his sister like a pharaoh.
Like an Egyptian queen.
Yeah. Only for her to rise from the fucking dead and come upstairs for him while the entire fucking house burns down.
Yeah. Because remember, it's Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh my God, that imagery at one point of all the bodies of all the victims of the Usher family's fortune.
Yeah.
Falling from the sky.
Yeah, we're showing him this is your legacy and all these people are like falling.
That was like Kubrickian. I don't know what else to call it.
Like, this is your legacy, Usher. This is it. 8 million dead souls.
And that's just in
America. Just in America, Roderick.
Damn. Well, with all that said, where can they find you, Count Jackula?
Well, you can find me here on YouTube, where I stream throughout the week. Hit that notification bell, hit subscribe, and come on down and we'll talk about all sorts of groovy stuff like horror movies, sex, mythology, and all kinds of things that I like to talk about, including role-playing games. I like role-playing games a lot, so I talk about those a lot. And if you want to be part of that conversation, you should come on down. What about you?
Y'all know me. I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me at the Horror Guru on Twitter, on Twitch, on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Mastodon. Just look up the Horror Guru or Blood Splattered Cinema and I'll be there. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you would like to help out either of us more directly, be sure to check out our Patreon pages. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way. And with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, if you made it this far into the video, then I want you to comment below, and be sure to comment below using the hashtag #IGotMine. Use the hashtag #IGotMine, that way I know. That way Jack knows. That way the whole world knows that you're about to get mauled by a monkey.
Yeah.
And you fucking deserve it.